Good evening, everybody. How's it going tonight? Can all see this, hear this? Yeah, thumbs up if it's working for you. Excellent. Cool beans. Let's have some fun here tonight. So it's been a while since we have done a webinar, and these are normally part of a membership group that we have that we get together a few times a month and do these sorts of things. And then it all kind of got put on the shelf as we're building other things around here, and we're going to get back to it. But what we'd like to do is really, a few times a year at least offer some of these and just get people engaged and throw some new things out there for y'all to think about and play around with your horses. So tonight's session being on meeting your horse's needs, and this has been like a huge piece of pretty much everything we're doing with any horse in any clinic is discovering what they need to move forward. And too often we get sort of wrapped up in trying to get the horse to do something or focusing on a maneuver, and we're focused on what we're looking for and what we're trying to achieve. But what is really the meat of that gets so often missed is, what does our horse need to succeed? And when we ask that question of ourselves, sometimes we don't even ever think of that, or sometimes we might not be able to even conceive of an answer. So that was what tonight's show was sort of constructed, so to speak, in order to delve into that topic just a little bit. And this whole thought started a while ago. I had an interview with a writer for Canadian Horse Journal for an article that they published about me and Amazing Horse Country back about a month ago. I think they ran it in the latest issue. I can't remember. And the writer, very cool, happened to be an old friend of mine. Like we rode together a lot, like 20 years ago, and then she kind of moved one way and I moved to a different part of the province, and we chat once in a while. But it was really neat to see her as the writer show up on my doorstep, after all that time, and go for a ride and talk horses. And it was interesting because she kind of took the angle that she wanted to take for the interview, and all the questions that she was asking me were about this style of relational horsemanship. And the discussion, went further into, my personal techniques and philosophies on working with horses. And it just kind of spiraled into a bunch of different conversations that was really actually very cool. But it got me thinking about a few things that cause relational horsemanship to be so successful. And on the flip side of that coin, what are some things that we can probably avoid, right, in order to guarantee our success a little bit better? And one of those pitfalls, I think, is the failure to address what our horse needs. And again, like I said, maybe not even being aware of what they are. And that brings us to, how would something like that even come about? And I think there's a lot of missings in our horse world today. And they kind of come from our desire to get things done yesterday, which is sort of the world we live in these days. But some of the things that we need that probably we're not getting is, we're not really ever taught to communicate in the horse's natural language, right? We're taught buttons, cues, methods, and we expect the horse to respond to those things. We're not taught leadership in the way a horse perceives leadership. We're not taught biomechanics. So in general, we lack an understanding of how the horse's body works. And I believe that's really required if we're going to sit on the back of one, right? We need an understanding of balance, how to achieve it. The motions and the athletic maneuvers that we do with them are dependent on our knowledge of how their body works. So we can, help them with their own body to achieve the things we're looking for. And, the other couple things that can be a struggle for us is that when we don't really understand something, but we're really open to learning, we'll just kind of take whatever's thrown our way. And that's how myths get started, right? So some of these that are going to play into the topic tonight, for example, we're taught that when a horse doesn't do what we want, right, or they express an opinion, that means they're misbehaving or they're rude, right? But neither of those things are actually true, right? They can't misbehave and they can't be rude. And we'll get into that, right? Another myth that seems to be popular right now is we can't look in a horse's eye because it's a sign of aggression, right? Nothing could be further than the truth than that. But, these things pop up. And if we don't know any better, we'll take them. So getting in a position where we really understand what's going on with horses so we can do things to support them. So, on the horse's end, how do these things come about where we end up with problems or issues with them? And anxiety and insecurity and fear are some of the biggest ones. And if you think about it, you catch your horse, you bring him into the arena or wherever you're going to work with them, we attach ropes to them and we move them around. If that was you and you had no idea why you were there, what would you feel like? Right? Let's step into their shoes for a minute, right? There's a lot of horses that have no idea what they're doing or why, right? They can get used to doing it because they know it's safe to do it, but do they really have an understanding? Right? Language is a big one. If someone was screaming at you in a language you didn't understand, how would you take that? Right? Horses don't understand human. They can learn a couple things, but it's very easy for us to learn horse. And again, their fears. If we take their fears and their responses to fears and perceive that as a negative thing, then sometimes our horses end up getting punished for being scared, right? And that can be a big issue. But, good news, we can change all of that. But some of this takes, sitting down and really thinking about reframing how we think about what we do with horses. And that's kind of what this show is all about. A few years ago, I think this was 3 years ago, I did a video on, we did a show, one of our member shows on horses' needs. And I used a horse I own whose name is Ditch. And we did a little intro video that's sort of described how we were going to kind of go about the session. And I want to show that to you now because again, this is several years ago, but I couldn't say it any better today. So I'm just going to play that for you guys here. Come here. Come on over here, bud. Come here. Hey. Excellent. Right on. Considering things that horses need, the road I've gone down with this guy here has been so unique and interesting. One of the things that, I really learned from Ditch is that, horses can really be a friend and they can actually care about you too. So this guy is pretty special because he's, really dialed into my needs a little bit and provides for them. When I need to just hang out and be with someone, he steps up to the plate. He's not herd bound. He doesn't need to be with the herd. And in fact, I think that what he has learned is that he can get way more out of our own relationship than he can get with these guys, which is very cool because what that means is he comes to me to seek it. And that's pretty special. When we have a horse like this that may have had a few, road bumps in their training history, it can be a real delight, I think, for them, or maybe a real surprise is a better way to put it, that they can actually enjoy time with a person. It's not all about work, that some of the needs that they have can be met by people instead of just being, chased in a circle around and around and around. And I think that's what Ditch has really come to discover with people, is that they can really be a pleasure to be with. And he seeks that out, and that's very cool stuff. Ditch is also a horse that harbored a great amount of fear and anxiety, and he doesn't so much anymore. So the more he comes to learn that he can follow me, or human beings for that matter, and trust, then the less uncertain he has to be about what's going on in his world. What's important for Ditch is to be free from fear, especially when that fear is tied to an expectation. When we have horses that have fears like that and they're uncertain about things and they have a lot of questions that need answering and they're not getting those answers and they're scared, and the response is to push them through the program, then clearly that's not meeting their needs. And horses like that generally get chalked up as washing out of the program or they're culled from the program. And it doesn't have to be the case, because usually those are the horses that can make the best horses for you. They just need to have their needs taken care of. So ditch was kind of one of those programs where, the trainer resorted to starvation in order to get him weak so he could push him through the program. And all that did was give this guy a really negative expectation about, how life with people worked, which is unfortunate because we can be excellent leaders, right? We have it within us to be able to understand and support and help a horse with everything they need. And it really doesn't take that much. It just takes setting aside our own ego for a minute and maybe putting our wants on the shelf for a period of time and digging into, what these guys need and how we can help. And in doing so, we really create a relationship. And I think that's something that's, so important, with anything we do with the horse. Just a couple things, maybe a little housekeeping thing here. If you have any questions about what I'm talking about tonight, it's unlikely I'm going to see you waving your arms because there's a whole bunch of people on the screen here. But if you want to type a question in the chat box, when I get a chance, I'll look at them and we'll address them. I am solo tonight because Leona is out on the East Coast, so I'm kind of handling this whole thing on my own, which is kind of fun. But whatever, makes me work. Anyway, getting back to the topic here. So what is a need? In the sense of things our horse might need. And I believe that, when we're thinking about the relationship between a horse and a handler, be it a rider or you're doing groundwork or whatever, or maybe even leading them from point A to point B, it's crucial to understand there is a difference between a want and a need. In clinics, I ask this question sometimes: what does your horse need? Right? Some common responses I get, the horse needs to respect me, or the horse needs to believe I'm the boss, or my horse needs more training. And honestly, look at it from their perspective. Do you actually think your horse thinks they need that stuff? Not in a million years, right? Those are desires of the handler. They're not needs for the horse. So we need to think about this a little bit differently. In the colt starting clinic that we started today, excellent group of people, and horses are all like 2 and 3 years old. That's very cool. One of the horses was struggling to walk over something. So we like to play with obstacles to kind of build our leadership and gain their trust. And off the bat. And we had a horse that was struggling with one of those things. And I asked, the group, what does he need to go forward over this thing? And the answer was, he needs to move forward. But, think of that from his perspective. That's what we want, but it's not what he needs. Does that make sense? He's not sitting there thinking, I need to go forward. Because if he was, he'd just walk over it. Right? So he needs something different, right, than what we want. A big, big thing to consider when we're looking at our perspective. If we put ourselves in the position of the horse, it can really help, maybe have a little bit of empathy for sometimes what they're going through. Consider a human scenario where maybe you're working for a company. Would you ever have the thought, I must become more submissive to please my boss? Yeah, put your hands up if that's ever something you've considered, right? Never, right? So again, it's not something you need, right? But you might need to take a course, maybe in a new type of software that your company has adopted, right? To help you be better at work. Or even better than that, maybe your employer comes in and says, hey, I see these are some places where you're struggling and these are some places where you're really good at. So here's some, maybe opportunities for training for you and some courses that are going to make your job easier, make you more productive at the workplace, and ultimately you're going to enjoy coming to work a little bit more. Right now, someone is doing something for you. They're looking at the things that you need to be successful and enjoy what you do, and supplying them for you. Right? That's the type of needs we're talking about. So, considering a parallel between us and the horse world as far as an employment situation might be concerned, I pulled this list from a website called challengeconsulting.com, and these are top 10 things that employees want from their job. clear expectations and goals, recognition and praise, open lines of communication, opportunities for growth, mutual trust, responsibility and accountability, respect for who we are, pride in the work we do, and learning and achievement. Anyone not agree with any of those? They seem to make a lot of sense, right? So I'd like to ask you to be open right now and maybe open to change, right? And consider that all those things are the things our horse needs too, right? And we're going to go through a few things that I feel horses need and discuss them a little bit. They're in no particular order of importance, but ask yourself, is my horse getting this stuff? Right. And not if it's a bad thing, if they're not, maybe they don't need them all. Right. There's some things that apply to some horses, some things that apply to different horses. So let's think of some things here. Number one, communication in the horse's own language, right? It's sensible that we as leaders communicate in the language of our followers. In the human world, how could we lead a group of people that don't speak the same language we do, right? The horse cannot learn English. Therefore, we only have one option, right? We need to learn horse. The horse's language, despite the popular myth, is not body language. Body language is simply an expression like me frowning or smiling, right? That's all it is, but it doesn't mean anything, right? Unless there's communication behind it. The horse's true language, being that of space, energy, empathy, and presentation, is what we need to practice our ability with in order to succeed with our horses. And it makes a huge difference. And in fact, in all our clinics, that's where we start getting, us some proficiency in speaking a language they can understand. And when we do that, one of the first things we notice is they get calm right away. It's like just like if you were, lost in a foreign country where people are yelling at you in a different language, if someone come up to you and spoke English, it'd be like a breath of fresh air, right? So horses kind of the same deal with that. In the communication department too, it's important that our horses know that they're being listened to and that they have a freedom, and know they do. They know they have a freedom to communicate and express their opinion, thoughts, and fears. This is very important. So, for example, let's say your horse is pawing at the ground. Okay, they're trying to tell you they're having a problem with something. It's not misbehavior. Does that make sense? Right? This is how horses communicate, right? It's not now if it was a 4-year-old kid stamping their feet, yeah, I think we could call that rude, because in our world, in our social society, right, something like that is considered rude. But in the horse's world, it's normal communication. So making those differentiations is a huge thing. Number two, work doesn't need to be work, at least not in the negative sense. When I hear people use the word work, it's generally associated with a negative thing going on. Oh, I have to go to work today. Well, I looked at my schedule and I don't have the day off anymore, and they want me to come into work, right? And then we hear things like, my horse doesn't like work, right? So it's always something bad, right? Would you agree? And again, the horse cannot conceive of a concept like work, right? They just do things, right? Work, play, they don't have those thoughts in their head. They're just doing things, some things they like, some things they don't. But sometimes we get in the kind of a bit of a paradigm of that horse work is a bad thing for a horse. They're not going to enjoy it. And then they try and do things to get out of it, right? But that's mythical, because that can't even happen in the limitations of their brain. And generally, those perceptions that we have about work and horses are a direct result of making our training about what we want, not what they need. Right? So, if I'm doing something with a horse that I want them to do, and they're having a hard time with it, right? We're not meeting their needs anymore, right? And we'll just struggle, and then we get frustrated. So there's a better way to do that than this. One way to think about this, and this has kind of driven me, every time I work with a horse, every time I work with a group of people, right? The horses must get a good deal out of what we're doing. Like, that is the ultimate goal. They might struggle, they might show fear, but we work through that, everything they do. At the end of a session, I want to see a horse that feels proud, trusted, confident, and relaxed. Not worn down, belittled, and frustrated, right? We're trying to build an athlete here. So we need to have an animal that can be confident and proud of themselves, right? Not make their experience with us a negative one. Number 3, biggie here, freedom from fear and anxiety, any of these things which cause them terror, right? As a prey animal, it should make sense that a horse is just normally great at distrusting, right? They can see everything as a threat. Being afraid is normal for them, but it doesn't work, right? If a horse is nervous about something, we're asking them to do something. Maybe you're trying to ride a circle and there's a scary corner, whatever. You're going down a trail ride and something moves in the trees or a scary rock, right? We're aware of all the fears that horses have. Well, most of them, anyways, right? But it doesn't work. So we need to eliminate that. It's almost step one on our list of starting to work with a horse, but getting rid of how, the fears that they have. And we don't do that by forcing them through it or riding them through it or putting more miles on. Like those don't work. Those thoughts don't work for us. If you're scared of skydiving, continuously pushing you out of an airplane ain't going to make that better, right? You'll probably end up needing some therapy, right? You'll probably blow your mind away, right? But we can, deal with the issue, get them to think a little bit differently, and come up with some constructive experiences, scenarios that we can work our horses through in order for them to develop confidence, right? And that is done by showing the horse how we respond to their anxiety. What are we going to do, right? That they can follow. So it's a true team effort, right? In the colt starting clinic, that's what we spent most of the day doing, right? Discovering things that our colts were nervous about, showing them how to follow us so that they could become confident, right? And we just repeat that with different scenarios all the time so that they become, they have a true, honest belief that if they follow us, they don't have to worry about anything. Pretty cool thing to have with a colt, because they're going to take that through their life relationship with you. So getting it at 2 and 3 years old, what a great thing. And, the freedom from fear category 2, an alternative to their instinctive responses, which are generally freeze, flee, and fight, right? The alternative to those that we need to show them, right, is to follow our focus and relax, right? So something scary is coming up. We want our horses to go, huh, what would you like, Scott? Right? Not freak out and take off, right? This is possible, right? But we need to show them that answer. We can't expect they're going to figure it out on their own. All righty. Number 4, a leader, right? There may be some horses out there that really don't think they need leaders, but we can sure make their life a little bit better if they do. Most of them gravitate toward a strong leader, right? And a leader, someone to follow that is supportive and that they can have faith in. I use the word faith instead of trust. Trust is something that's, what would you say, object based or scenario based. Like, I trust you to, I don't know, close the door after you go out of my house, right? But that doesn't mean I trust you if I give you the keys to my truck and trailer, right? But if I had 100% faith in you, I would trust you with everything, right? So faith is what we're working toward, so that anything that happens, our horses will buy into us and follow us. So that's the type of leadership we want to create. Leadership comes with a job for the horse. That job is to follow us, but be accountable for it. So accountability is something that I think we need to define a little bit. And what I just kind of wrote on my notes here about a definition, kind of off the top of my head, it probably says something different in the dictionary, but it is this: a clear understanding of exactly what we're looking for so that our horse can do it on their own and we trust them to do it without having to micromanage. Does that make sense? So, if I'm sitting on the back of my horse and I want to go forward, If I get energetic and look up, we should have it, right? They're accountable for that. Or, if we're on the ground and I'm walking them and I stop and they stop right beside me. And if they get 2 inches ahead, they realize it and back up on their own without me having to ask, right? That's accountability, right? They can be really good at accountability because horses are exceptionally precise, with their ability to use their bodies. But they'll never get there if we're not clear in how we lead, right? If our leadership is sloppy, the horses can never be precise. It would be like you going to work and your boss hands you a project and there's like 3 words on it. And you're like, well, what is this all about? And they're like, I don't know, just do it. Well, what are you supposed to do? Right? So if we lack the construct for what our horses want to do or what we want our horses to do, and they don't have an understanding, we can't really hold them accountable for what they do. Make sense? So being super clear. With respect to leadership, I have a little video that I shot yesterday with Jerry, just discussing these things a little bit. Now, Jerry is my 4-year-old, so he has known nothing but this style of horsemanship since he was, when did I meet him? 8 months old, right? Got him when he was 2, right? So he's coming along real nice. I love the little guy, but and he's a character. But I'll let you have a look here. One of the things that's really important when we're working with horses is that we lead with clarity so that our horses can follow with precision. And if we're not clear enough in their language, there's really no way we can expect that they can do anything for us. Kind of makes sense. It's like, if you were to be working at a manufacturing company and your boss just said, build the thing, and that's all the instruction you got. Well, you're going to be left guessing. Right? So if a horse is guessing, they're going to try a bunch of stuff like rolling in front of the camera. Oh, Jerry. So what becomes important then is how do we be clear? And it starts with, the very most basic pieces of the horse's language, which are space, energy, our presentation, and empathy. So let's say we're going to lead him. So in order for me to lead with clarity, I have to have a focus on where we're going. If I'm staring at the ground, that gives him nothing, right? And then, my energy behind that. And that gives us forward motion. So if I look forward, think let's move, and Jerry doesn't move, I keep my forward focus, just a little bit of pressure behind, and we go together. Right on. So when Jerry and I are working together, right, our whole rapport, how we work with one another, depends on, him being accountable. And if he's accountable for something and he can try it and do it, that gives him a sense of accomplishment and pride. If we're sloppy in our leadership and leave the horse guessing, then more often than not, we're unsatisfied with the results. But the onus is on us to be clear in the first place. So let's look at, just basic leading, for example. What do I need him to be accountable for? His position, right? Very simple thing. But many times when we're looking at people leading horses, we see the horse in front or behind or off to the side, and it's pretty clear that there's not really any leadership going on there. When we think about horses in a herd, leading, following, that's their life, right? So it's very important to them. And they'll start taking liberties, like this guy pushing his way up in the herd out there, if we allow it. And he's one of those horses that will. So we need to be super clear about where we want him positionally when we're doing anything. And that allows us to do things that we struggle with, like trailer loading, obstacles, crossing a river, just about anything, because he's accountable to follow and he knows it. And he also knows he can be good at that. So let's try something here. We're going to just walk a little circle, and I'm going to hold him accountable for his position. And all that means is, if he gets too far ahead, I let him know. If he gets too far behind, I'll let him know. But that space of too far ahead or too far behind, I want to narrow it down eventually to be maybe like an inch or less. And he's good enough to do it. Every horse is. And what that does is keep them focused on us. because he needs to be thinking, where do I need to be? What is Scott looking for all the time? But if we don't have that kind of conversation with him, in the basic groundwork, how can we expect it in the saddle? So let's just try something here. I'm just going to walk a circle with Jerry. His job is to stick with me. I shouldn't need the lead rope. If I pick up my pace, right, he needs to pick up his to stay with me. If I relax, slow down, he needs to do that too. Right on. So we kind of start where we or end where we started. Right on. And now to him, that's just like following another horse. He already knows how to do it. We just need to speak it clearer. Some of the things that we play around with, that's just a kind of a tip of the iceberg, a simple exercise. But, for example, what could we take that to? Let's say I sit on his back and I want a leg yield without touching him, right? He can follow that too. I see him do it with other horses. So how can we learn to present ourselves and hold him accountable to do it, right? And that's the leadership agreement that we seek. Other things, thinking about what our horses might need. Here's one for you: positive expectations, right? Instead of negative ones. And we think, how good horses are at making simple associations. For example, right? Feed dish means tasty food, right? Any of your horses know that? Right? Someone took ditch today in the arena and he's like sniffing at their pockets. Well, Leona, right? Why is that the case? Right? He's got an association with treats in a pocket, right? Or, even things that we use functionally, like click means trot, right? Or whoa means stop, when they hear the word. So they can make associations like that, a few of them, right? An interesting comical one that's happening here all the time now, thanks, Leona, is that she better not watch this after. But like we have a shed that's across from our horse pasture, and inside that is where we keep all the different horse feeds and things. Well, I've got videos of this happening. Leona will walk into the shed and get something and give it to one of the horses when she sees them. Well, now they all know what that shed means, right? So as soon as they see someone walking toward that shed, they all come running. Right? But that's a basic association for them. Pretty easy. But negative associations can also be made. And this is where we can have problems. For example, a horse that has, an ill-fitting saddle. So every time we put the saddle on and strap it on, right, it hurts. Now, some horses won't react to that. They'll just get injured, right? Some horses will. Maybe they'll toss you off at an extreme, right? But they'll start to have an association, when you tie them up, it's like, uh-oh, here comes that saddle. Or even the rein. Ditch, for example, in his initial training was cranked on that rein like in ways I don't even want to imagine, right? So that when I first started to, pick up a rein and touch it, he just threw his head up to the other side before I even, he even felt the Bozell move, right? So that's a negative association, but it was because someone kept cranking him with the right hand, right? So they can have negative ones too. And it's important, that we get rid of those negative associations, but we don't do it by just ceasing to instigate the problem. We need to show them an alternative. Like we need to create another expectation for them. So, if his expectation is that the rein means he's going to get his head pulled off, then I need to show him that, this is how I want you to respond to the rein in a different way. Right? Not just expect it to go away, because it won't. Right? Does that make sense? Right? So starting a horse, we want to make sure all their associations are positive. Retraining a horse, we need to replace the expectations with different ones. So it's not hard to do that, but we have to be really sort of cognizant about, what the horse is struggling with, and not kind of chalk it up as, every time I pick up a rein, my horse throws his head. How do I make him stop? That's not the answer, right? He needs something from you, right? We got to supply it. Just a question from Ann here. When you say let him know he is too far ahead or behind when you lead him, what do you mean? So that would kind of launch us into a whole different show. But basically, it's with my space. How does another horse do it? They push their space around. So do I, right? I can draw him forward with my space. I can push him back with my space, right? And that's how he knows, right? But when we practice using our space to ask horses to come, go, move, right? Then it's easy to have those conversations, and we can back them up. I can um I'll keep these notes, you guys, and if there's something that you ask that I can help sort of outside this tonight's show, I'll just send you a link to it, because we've got like, I don't know, 200 hours of videos on all these things, right? or better yet, come to a clinic and we can do it in person. Way easier than trying to learn it off a video. A lot of these things involve kind of you feeling, getting some feedback about things you're doing in the moment, and really the only way to get that done in a great way is in person. So yeah, come over, we'll do it. Um, number 6, to be acknowledged and understood, right? And I started the show with this thought, and I'll just follow up on it. In order to meet this need for the horse, the onus is on us to understand that a horse is communicating, but they can never be bad, right? That what we are told is rude or bad is normal horse communication. If the horse is doing something that you perceive as rude or bad, it's a direct expression of the lack of leadership. It's our issue, not theirs. They're just being a horse. Makes sense? So we need to change something so the behavior goes away. They don't. Cool with that thought? It's a tough pill to swallow, but gulp it down. Or you'll forever be frustrated with these things, right? Understand that a prey animal can be fearful of absolutely anything, even if you're not, right? And I mean, that goes in our world too, right? My brother is deathly afraid of spiders. I love them, right? We have a spider that lives in our side by side. He's got a big web built up there, and I named him Richard, and we drive around all day. You know what I mean? I think they're cool. And he doesn't. He won't even come here anymore, right? So understanding that a horse can't make assumptions, that they can't use anything other than very basic logic, like we talked about, like dish means food, and they cannot draw on learnings from previous experiences and apply them to things that are unrelated. For example, if I had a buck for every time someone said, my horse can walk through a river, how come he can't walk through that water box obstacle? They're not even remotely the same. And your horse will never in a million years make the association that a river and a box of water are just water. Does that make sense? Right? That's just reality. But on the other side, it's important that we have an understanding, or a belief maybe is a better word, that a horse is incredibly intelligent. They can follow with exceptional precision, right? Their precision in motion and athleticism will never cease to astound me, right? But we need to get there somehow. So having your horse follow, right, is something that we need to embrace versus learning how to control them with aids, right? Because that if we're controlling them with the aids, that's disregarding the fact that they have a brain, because then we're just riding a dirt bike. Makes sense? It's something to think about. Um, Getting into athletic ability as my number 7 here, right? Athleticism is not simply exercise. Sure, going for a run is going to cause you to be more athletic in the sense that you're building muscles and stamina, and your heart and all these wonderful things. But think of in the context of maybe an upper level athlete, like Leona's a figure skating coach. So like think about a figure skater. Think of all the components that define athletic ability. It's not just what they do with their body. It's not being fit, right? It's their ability to balance. It's their ability to move in balance in complex ways, right? And knowing that none of that can happen if they're anxious, because anxiety leads to muscular tension, which prevents athletic ability. Makes sense? Think about, a martial artist, and if you've ever watched like even the Hollywood movies, right, where everything kind of starts with calm, right? We bring our energy down, we get centered, we get focused, and then we do something, right? That pretty much goes for everything in the athletic world, right? We can't perform if we're like wound up and anxious. That tension just carries through our body. It's exhausting, right? And it's hard to move that way. So athletic ability starts with a horse being calm. Then we move into balance, right? And then we move into motion. And we just continue that into everything you can possibly think of. So it's just something to note that part of our job then isn't just to get the horse's body to do what we want. Their body will do what we want when they're calm, when they're free of fear, when they can follow us, which is never going to happen if we can't lead. Right? Crazy, but true. Okay. I have a video here that I shot with Zeus. Oh, when was this? 5 years ago, right? And Zeus's story, he was captured in 2015 as a wild stallion, and he eventually got rehomed to me through one of the wild horse associations out there, who traded me hay for him in turn for me training him. And I gave them videos of the training and stuff. So lots of video was shot of that guy. I should just do a reality series on it because there's so much. But anyway, Zeus never went back to them because I fell in love with that horse, and he's my horse, right? And he's here, and he will be forever until his dying day, right? Because there's just so much to learn from him, and just seeing how much he enjoys his life. There's nothing I ever want to do to disrupt that. But right, what a long path to get here, right? Man, the things you learn when you go through that. But anyway, just a little video here with Zeus. Hang on. So this is the first real ride on Zeus with the saddle. And again, thanks Dale for lending me the saddle and the side pull because I forgot my other hackamore at home. So just going through some real basic steps with this guy. Getting on him, putting my feet in the stirrups, moving things around a little bit, settling myself in there and seeing how he feels when I do that. And the whole point of this exercise really was just to get Zeus moving forward. Like getting on him is one thing, or getting on a horse is one thing, but getting him to go forward with someone on their back can be a little bit daunting for them sometimes. So I really don't care where Zeus goes, only that he does go. So really putting my energy out there, my focus forward, saying let's go for a walk, bud. And he takes it, and we go for a little walk. Really good stuff. So right here, Zeus gets a little bit stuck, and I just add a little bit of pressure to get it to move forward, and no problem at all. I noted this on the ground a little bit, and it became more apparent in the saddle. Zeus has a little bit more struggle on the right side, so getting a right turn out of this was a little bit more difficult, but really getting him to move forward a little bit, and then starting to focus to the right, and then kind of playing around a little bit with seat and leg and rein, really kind of got him over that hump, and really pleased with the way this turned out. And after a 10-minute ride, moving around a little bit, got off again, kind of moving the saddle around, putting some weight in the stirrup as I get off, and he just takes it like a pro. Zeus is really a model horse for showing how positive leadership experiences can build trust. I just love it. So I'll stop it there. The rest is just credits. But it's cool. And there was, when was it, in the winter? I think it was January. I got a call from someone who was writing an article on the wild horses in Alberta. And she wanted some pictures of, me and Zeus, because she'd heard the story about us, and I probably hadn't been on him in a couple months. Like, I'm kind of happy where he is. I can get on him. We can go on the trails. His life is awesome. What more can we do? And it's like, well, that's interesting. So, went and caught him, threw the saddle on, hopped on, hadn't been on him in a while, hadn't done anything with him in a while. How do you think it went? Probably better than it was the last time. Right. And the reason is, I have, taken all the time and there is no end to the amount of time I will do this with, but to meet all his needs, all his worries, get rid of them. Right. His confidence with someone on his back and the tack and the saddle and where we go and all these thoughts that we have, they're all there. So that will never, ever fade. Right. So one of the things I really like about this style of training, right, is that you can leave your horse for an extended period of time and come back, and it might be better than when you left, but pretty much a guarantee it's not going to be worse, right, unless something catastrophic has happened in their life. So it's really neat, but it kind of put me on the spot. It's like, oh, I got to get these pictures to this person tomorrow, so we got to go for a ride. Let's see how it goes, right? But it's kind of fun. We started talking about the herd. So my number 8 here, we need to be the better herd for our horse, right? And stemming from their need of a herd. So for example, when we take our horse out of the herd to go ride or to do any kind of work, right? In their world, we're changing herds, right? We're taking them out of one and putting them into another, right? The other herd is us and our horse. That makes sense? Right? So they're just changing herds, right? The dynamic is different. How they integrate and move is different. Different herd. Our horse is with us for a way smaller period of time than they are with their regular herd, right? Maybe let's say you ride once a week for an hour. How many hours are there in a week? Right? You get one. Okay, you better make it good. You know what I mean? So it goes without saying that we need to make our herd, that is our horse and us, right, way more enticing, fulfilling than their own herd, or they won't want to be with us, or they'll be looking to get back to their own buddies, which is where we get the barn sour stuff from, right? Or, you pull your horse out and they're calling their buddy the whole time you're trying to do something with them, right? Is because they're seeking something from their herd that they're not getting in ours, right? So then our job, meet that need, right? Make our herd better. And when our herd is better, when we're giving them things they can't get over there, right? That will go away. Right? It's almost sort of sensible, right? So we make sure that what we do with our horses is more enriching than what we get with their own herd. We can provide them with things they don't get with their buddies, like confidence, right? Working to eliminate their anxiety, acceptance, right? Maybe they have herd struggles out there. They don't have them with us, right? Understanding, recognizing they have an issue and helping them with it. They get that, right? And providing them with a sense of pride. They did something good. They tried for us. It's like, oh man, buddy, that was awesome. They can feel all that stuff from us, right? So they can get kind of addicted to it, right? This is how Zeus came around, right? He got things from me he never ever realized were even existed, right? And he's hooked on it now. It's very cool, right? So it's kind of fun. It also really helps with issues like, perhaps maybe you're on a trail ride and, let's say, picture yourself on a trail ride with a bunch of other people. Let's say you just want to walk and get some pictures and the people you're with take off at a trot. Will your horse trot off with them? Who are they following? The other horses or you? Right? So again, a practical example of how we need to make our herd better. A couple of years ago, before I started getting on Jerry's back, I taught a clinic, or I taught lots of them, not just one, right? But in the trail clinics, I would hike with Jerry. I'd saddle him up, put the Bozell on him. I have the Macadie in my hands. I'd stand back by my stirrup, and we would ride that way. I would hike, but he would be kind of ahead of me, just like riding. The only difference being I'm 6 inches over because I'm not sitting on his back. And we got out to one of our hills, and one of the horses at the beginning or at the front trotted up the hill, and then all the other horses wanted to trot up the hill. And Jerry kind of looked at me and he's like, "Are we trotting up the hill?" Right? And I'm like, "Not a chance." Right? I ain't running up a hill. Right? Right? And he's like, "Yeah, suits me just fine." And we walked up it together. But that is the relationship I want to have. Right? That, if things are going on around, he looks to me for an answer. Pretty cool stuff. Things that we kind of have a really good understanding of probably already, maybe one of them being your horse understands you're there to help, right? Think of a mare taking care of a foal. Think of a herd protector. Maybe you have one in your herd, right? Zeus is one, right? If he notices something moving off in the bush, like he'll run to investigate. Ditch is another one. He's the lookout for the herd. Or we notice that horses stand, next to a horse that's sleeping as a guard, right? So they understand being taken care of. Maybe you've had a horse that's been injured, right? And through that healing experience and you treating them, you build a deeper bond. Ever had that happen? Right? If you haven't, you will. If you own a horse, right? It's going to happen. They're going to get hurt, right? So those things can go to build, a really good experience or a relationship with them. The number 10, a sense of belonging and acceptance. Horses are exceptionally social animals. And the herd is really their world. It's where they spend most of their time, like we talked about. But they can also be lonely. They can struggle with loss, in ways that are similar to us, right? So they rely a lot on companionship. And if you have a herd of a number of horses, you'll see them kind of partner with each other, or have maybe mini herds within your big herd where things are a little bit different than the rest of the herd. That their dynamic is really based on their sense of who they belong with, where they're comfortable and accepted, right? So again, making sure that they feel accepted with us is a big deal. Cool. Um, Another little video with Jerry here. Hang on a second. We all know that, a horse can pick up what you feel, right? We're told that, in our very beginning riding, where we're told, don't be nervous or your horse will know you're nervous. Well, they can feel absolutely everything else too. Nervous isn't the only thing they can pick up from you. They can pick up on your confidence, your pride, your energy level. That's how we get a gait change. We change our energy, they follow. So they're already skilled at pretty much doing everything we need them to know. And then our job becomes, how do we present ourselves in a way that they can follow? So part of that, under the communication moniker would be, the empathy piece. How do I feel? And using that as a tool. So for example, let's say he was nervous about something. Maybe we had something in front of us that I was asking him to walk over, and he's looking at it thinking, this is scary, right? Well, my response should be, 1, focus where I want to go. 2, relax, right? And 3, let's go forward together. Right? So then I answer his concern like a herd leader. So we don't have to worry about this, buddy. Right? If he tries something, I really feel proud. Right? A real sense of pride for him, because he'll pick up on that and he'll make an association that his attempt, whether or not we got on it or not, his attempt is what I'm looking for. So he tries. Again, maybe this is something scary. We get one step toward it, and then he needs to stop because he's a little bit nervous about it. And at that point, right? It's like, good job, bud. Well, that was well done. Good try. Right? And then any anxiety that he has in that moment will disappear. Right? And then he learns, through those through those actions, that I'm taking care of him. And he doesn't have to worry about things because I'm going to help him through that. So, one of his needs that way is some feedback in a positive way, that everything he tries is a success, right? And he doesn't have to worry about being nervous about something or scared about something, because I'm going to help. One thing I'm going to touch on right now, just because it's happening, is the relationship that I have with him. Like, he feels totally comfortable being with me. I'm not quite sure what he's doing, but we can play, we can hang out, we can engage with one another, we can touch one another, and those are all within the boundary of our leadership agreement. Like even right there, like we're having fun together. There's nothing to say that a horse can't be in your space, right? If you couldn't share your space with a horse, how would you ever ride? How would you ever pick up their feet? How would you ever saddle them? How would you brush them? Right? We need to share space. But whether we can or not, is our choice. So if I didn't want Jerry kind of sleeping with his nose on my chest, I just ask him to move. But the fact is, I like it, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, because we can play. Now, if he actually was trying to move me, right, he's just trying to get his head on my shoulder. But if he was actually trying to move me, I would have to use my space to move him back, not pull him back with a lead rope. That's not part of their language, right? They don't move each other with lead ropes and pull like that. So my space, I push it on him. Good. And I can move him back there and say, hey, we're going to hang out, but you'll be over there. And he's totally cool with that, right? They just need to know and not get in a fight about it, right? They're very social. And he wants to come in, it's like, that's okay. I'll accept it, right? But if he's trying to move me, that's a different story. Good. Yeah, trying to shoot a video when your horse wants to be a goof and play, but whatever, it's fun. I like it. Are you guys cool with going a few minutes over? Okay, cool. I'll rush my way through some of the stuff. A couple of really important ones here. We'll go through them. Your horse needs time to think about things. It might even be overnight. Just like we have phrases in our language like I slept on it. And then the next day you're not worried about it or you understand it better. They're no different. And that's because a brain is the same. Like brain matter is the same, brains work the same way. It doesn't really matter what animal it is. So if I can offer the biggest piece of advice, it would be this: wait, 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 wait. Right? We get too hung up in thinking a horse has to do something for us right now. Here's an example. You're trying to get a whoa. Okay. I'm going to throw something at you here. Don't worry if it takes you the length of the arena or 5 minutes. Don't ask any harder. Wait. They need to think about it, right? So how am I going to ask my horse to stop? Sit, energy down, pick my chest up, right? Feel that that I'm shifting onto my hind, because that is the request for them to stop. That's what they do with their bodies. If they can follow me, that's what they do with theirs, right? So I do it, they do it. Right now, wait. Okay. And then it's like, nothing is changing. Okay. I need to get their focus. So now is when I might think about touching a rein. Right. And the reins together can also help in asking your horse to elevate their front end, which will help get their weight on their back. But I don't mean pull them up. I mean touch, like the weight of 2 knees in your fingers. Right. It's like, come up here with me, bud, and sit. Right. And wait. Maybe they'll take another 100 yards and then they'll stop. When they do, praise them. This is hard to do because we get so greedy about getting something right away, but they need to learn it, right? So they need time to think. Okay, makes sense? It's a biggie. Skipping a couple of things here that we kind of touched on here. One of the things that I threw on my list here was liberty, but I need to define it. Liberty being the horse, following or mirroring our presentation just like they would another horse. So liberty isn't something we teach them because they already understand it. Liberty is us building a leadership relationship with our horse where they can follow us with precision because we have learned or are learning to lead with exceptional clarity, right? We need this to ride, right? So don't understate this. Your groundwork, the liberty stuff you do with your horse, if you do it, can form the basis of riding. Because to me, riding a horse is liberty, except you're on their back. All you did was change positions. Instead of being in a different spot, you're on top of them now. But they should still be able to follow you exactly the same way. So it's a great place to get things going. A couple more things here. I'll throw this one at you. A couple more. Peace. Moments or durations of time where you're asking nothing of your horse, but you are together. And I spend a lot of time doing this with my horses, not only for my own mental well-being, because, building this place and running this business or two businesses, can be really overwhelming sometimes. And just going to hang out with a horse, I don't need to ride, right? But just to spend some time with them can just kind of bring me back to kind of a level mental playing field. And you probably all know what that's like, right? But it's a great place to sort of build a bit of a rapport with your horse in just the same way that, maybe you work for a company and they have a company softball game, or, a pub night, or a movie night or something where you just go hang out with each other and there's nobody has any expectations. Like there's no work schedule. There's no, social structure to the workplace. It's just a bunch of people hanging out, right? And it really changes the dynamic of how those people interact that they take back to their workplace, right? So, spending time doing things with your horse that are not training, maybe just hanging out in the herd, moving around with the herd, hanging out with them, eating with them, right? That sets your herd dynamic up that you take and work with them. So it's a big deal. Last one I'll throw at you here. This needs some explaining, and I call this confidence in vulnerability. Not very many people are great at this, and honestly it took me a long time to start to do this. Vulnerability is when we feel susceptible to injury or attack, be it physical or even emotional or mental, right? It's a feeling of being defenseless, right? We all get what that means, correct? Okay, if a horse is feeling the need to defend, right? Maybe against the rain, they get tight when they think you're going to pick it up. They're not letting go of tension. This reduces their ability to balance, and on and on and on. Usually if that happens, we think I need more leg, more rein, bigger spurs, whatever. But the whole thing is they need to just let go of being defensive so they don't carry tension in their bodies. The problem with a horse is that their mechanism for defending themselves so they don't feel vulnerable is to get tight with muscles we need them to let go. So we're asking our horses to do when they do something athletic is to be vulnerable. Does that make sense? Right? In a clinic, we could really explore that. But I want you to think about it. Think about a time you felt vulnerable, right? We're asking our horses to be vulnerable when we ride, right? And now, can we get them to be confident about being vulnerable? They, I could recognize that I feel vulnerable, but I can be confident in not worrying about that. Right? If you can conceive of such a concept, it's huge, right? But we need it. And sometimes, I like to think, here's an example. Think of something that you don't like to do, and you don't like to do it because maybe you don't want to see people or have people see that you're not good at it. Right? Ever had something like that happen? I don't know. What could it be? Let's say you and your friends hook up to go to the beach and you're going to play volleyball and you suck at volleyball. Right? Maybe you start thinking of excuses not to join them. Oh, I'm not feeling good. Oh, my mom called. Right? Okay, here's confidence and vulnerability. You say, I accept that I suck at volleyball, but I'm going to go have fun. Right? You put yourself in a position where other people might see that you're weak at something and you're confident about doing that. That's what I mean. Big deal, right? Anytime we touch a rein, we're asking our horses that. Consider that for a bit, right? So, having them be confident in letting go of their fears, in gaining, letting go of their defenses and trusting that we're not going to hurt it is probably the biggest thing we can do for a horse. Crazy stuff. And then I had one more little video. I don't think I'll bother to show it because it's just what I just said, except with that with Jerry. So, ultimately, my training style here and probably that of other people that work in relational horsemanship, is to make the training, even I use the word loosely because I don't think the horses really need to be trained. We just need to learn how to work with them, right? Make that about meeting their needs. That's what training is. In this colt starting clinic, what do we do on day one? Work with every horse a little bit to see what they need. Now we take those needs and decide what we're going to do. That's training, because everything we do is something they need. Does that make sense? If we just took, here's 10 steps to starting your colt, that doesn't work, because some of the horses will need that. Some of the horses don't. Some of the horses are not ready for it. Some of them only need steps 1 and 2, or some of them need steps that aren't on there, right? So, method-based training like that always fails ultimately. But, learning what your horse needs and just following that along as they progress, right, is a really good way, to get a solid, confident horse that'll follow you and not be worried about anything. In order to do that, right, we need to focus on, ultimate goals, not immediate wants. Like, I don't need my horse to stop right now. I don't need my horse to walk over this box, right? But recognizing what they need in order to move forward a little bit with that exercise. And then when we do that, the horse recognizes that. They gain trust in you, right? They gain faith in you, right? We start to build a team that's strong because we're having our horse feel important about being a part of the team. They have some pride in being with us, right? And that inspires them to try harder, to contribute to a greater degree, because your horse is actually getting something out of it, right? And in turn, we'll get everything we want in the end, right? And you probably get it quicker, right, than going through a path of frustrating roadblocks. It's cool stuff, right? Anyways, it's past 8, so I'm going to wrap this up. I sure hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions about anything we talked about, fire me off an email. I can kind of direct you to some videos or whatever we have on that will deal with questions you might have. And again, all of our clinics, very strong focus on developing ourselves as leaders for our horses. It's a proven path to success. Becoming a better leader will help you in your human world too. It's not just for your horse, right? And if you're really kind of into these things, we've got some spaces left in our progressive horsemanship, which is entirely one-on-one, right? They're all about discovering, building you as a confident leader, working through struggles that your horse might have in order to build a solid team with the two of you. And it's fun. I love those clinics more than anything else. So sign up for when I come out. Right, there's my pitch. Right. Okay, gang. Thanks for showing up tonight, and we'll hope to see you soon. I want to do some of these, maybe every month. So looking forward to seeing you back here. All right. Take care, gang, and enjoy the weather. I think if it stops blowing, we'll have a nice evening. All right. Have a good one. Whenever we touch a rein, it's important to know that we're asking the horse to be vulnerable. They defend themselves with, their head, and when they feel the need to defend or be offensive even, right, they get tight in the neck, right? So when that happens, we pretty much lose the ability for them to be athletic and balanced, and then we end up trying to force them to do things or to move in certain ways. So having him give at the pole, right, is an expression of his vulnerability, right? So when even I touch here and just ask him to give, there, and we see he can just tip his head, not bend his neck, but just move his head on the pole, right? He's vulnerable in that moment, right? That would be like me, putting my hands on either side of your head and going to turn it, and you relaxing your neck instead of bracing. That's what I just asked of him, right? He is a prey animal. I am a predator. So to ask a prey animal to be vulnerable to us, it's a really big deal for them. But it's one of the most key pieces that we need to have with every horse, because if we don't have it, they'll be tight when we need them to be relaxed, right? And then athletic motion is very difficult.
So having them be comfortable when they're vulnerable, right, starts with Jerry waking up. There you go, bud. Right? Just a little give like that. And the neat thing about that is that's what the rein is for. When we pick a rein up, right, we're asking him to give it the pull, right? If he can do that off a very tiny feel, right, we're good to go. Right? It's a big deal. Something that you can probably relate to that you may have experienced in your own life is the comfort of being spoken to in your own language. So, for example, maybe you've traveled somewhere that speaks a language different than English and you don't understand it. That can be frustrating. It can be terrifying sometimes, if you really don't know what's going on around you and no one can explain it to you. But if we can speak in the language of the horse, right away, right, we'll generally see them calm down if they're anxious, because it's like a refreshing, a real refreshing moment. So the language of the horse, thinking about space and energy to start off with, like Jerry couldn't be any more relaxed than this, right? Can we speak it? And it's something we need to learn. It's something they already know. So I honestly believe there's really not too many things we need to teach a horse, right? They need to understand they can follow a human being like they can another horse, but that's about it, right? And the rest of that, the onus is on us to learn, right? And the more we learn about how they think, how they work, how they perceive fears and leadership, the quicker we can get through, any struggles or not allow them to happen in the first place. But it starts with our ability to communicate. Because if we can't communicate in their language, it's sort of a hopeless task moving further forward than that. And the onus is on us to learn it. It's not the onus is not on them to learn human. It's on us to learn horse. It's so easy that way. So, for example, we'll play around a little bit with space here. So, a little bit of knowledge of his body. If he wakes up here, this might work. I asked him, let's say we want to think about doing a side pass off to our right. Well, how does he do that? What has to happen in his body in order for him to do that? He needs to pick shoulders up that way, and he needs to move off my space, right? And then there's some things in his body that will facilitate that, but the presentation is up to me, right? So if I start thinking we're moving up, move your nose, and over, right? He can just follow that. It's not very hard. And if he can do that on the ground, he can do it when I sit on him. Right? Now, with this guy, being 4 years old, this is going to be a real major year in his life because we're going to start to really ride. But, the past 2 years that I've spent with him has been in developing our relationship so that he can follow me very precisely, doing everything we need to do in the groundwork so that when I hop on his back, and when I do, it's awesome, I love it, right? He's right there, right? I feel like we're doing a side pass, for example, or moving in front of the camera, right? And he's right there trying it, right? If we want to do a turn on the haunches or a turn on the forehand, he follows what I do with my body. And again, that's his language. He already knows it. But if he trusts me enough, right, he'll follow it.